Real stories of werewolves of Dogman history from your emails, illustrated and animated with the democratizing magic of machine learning AI. Welcome to Scary Stories.
My husband feeds this werewolf. Dear Scary Stories NYC, my husband and I moved to an unnamed town in the woods last year when he retired and I began working from home. We've had a hard time adjusting to the lifestyle, but now I'm starting to worry that my husband might be going native. He's begun to feed this large werewolf-type creature that we have haunting our property. And he doesn't feed him the venison he catches himself. That's our dinner. No, he goes into town and buys the expensive meat for this werewolf or dogman creature. To be fair to my husband's side of things, I like to explain things a bit more starting in the beginning. When we first moved out here to a certain location in Wisconsin inside the woods, we were both very happy. It had been a goal of ours since before we even married to someday get to move away from everyone and live in peace with nature. What we soon learned, however, was that it was not always nature's dream to have us move out to its neighborhood. In fact, at least some of the neighborhood seemed to overtly object to our presence. There is this bear-like dog that walks around half the time on its hind legs, trying to scare us away from the woods. In my opinion, it only stands up and walks around when it knows we're near, and it is only doing it to frighten us off. Like, there's already a two-legged predator in this area, so you humans go find your own hunting ground, or something along those lines. My husband does hunt, so maybe that's really at the crux of all this. Maybe it's a local wild canine that's concerned about the two of us eating into its supply of deer and squirrel meat. That might explain a lot of its behavior, especially when we were first trying to settle in out here. The werewolf or dogman first showed itself to my husband while he was cleaning his hunting rifle out back one afternoon, and he came inside to tell me that we had a bear problem. He pointed the creature out to me while we were looking out the kitchen window, and I told him that was no bear. I told him it was some kind of a dog, not a bear, but he laughed me off and said it was a bear with mange. I went and got my phone to take a picture, but by the time I got back I couldn't see where it had gone. It never looked at all like a bear to me. For one thing, the ears were pointed, while bear ears are rounded. My husband did admit that he thought it was odd that the bear had such a golden eye shine, and not the more greenish hue that he was used to. But he still insisted that it had to be a bear, because dogs don't stand up like that one did. We couldn't really see most of the creature's body during that first sighting, but we would both eventually see much more. The next thing that started to happen was that someone or something was either throwing rocks at our house in the night, or else just walking up to the house and hitting it. We never really did figure out what any of that was all about, but we both tended then and tend now to attribute the disturbances to that upright creature that we had both seen. We feel it was trying to intimidate us, and trust me, we were both feeling pretty intimidated. My husband stopped thinking it was a bear with mange when he was tracking a deer out there in the woods one night. He told me that when he was about to take his shot, out of nowhere, the creature we had seen, or one just like it, leaped upon the deer, taking it down and out of his line of vision. Although he might have seen the predator for less than a second, he saw it in close-up through his viewfinder, and it moved too fast to be a bear with mange. That's also not the behavior of a sick bear, to go after a buck in that way. Bears who have mange tend to scavenge their meals because they lack the strength and speed to do the things that my husband says he saw this dog creature do. Once we were both agreeing that it was a canine, our next step was to start researching online to find what kind of canine lives in Wisconsin and walks upright. We were both a bit taken aback to learn that pretty much all the links and information we could find were on paranormal and cryptid sites. The idea that we were seeing something that didn't officially exist was upsetting to both of us, because neither of us are really the type to believe in things that aren't supposed to be real. We don't have friends who believe in ghosts or UFOs or Bigfoot, and now suddenly my husband was having his game taken from him by a real-life werewolf. I mean, that's just absurd. It's impossible. This had to be a known animal, we were certain of it. How could two people see the same thing if it isn't real? Yet Wikipedia says werewolves are not real, and so that means my husband and I are now officially weirdos. In private, anyway. We haven't publicly admitted to any of this so far. We don't want to lose our friends, and we don't want to lose our credibility. We both have learned a lot about the world this past year. It's really hard to find accurate information sometimes, even with all the internet to search through. We soon found ourselves watching YouTube videos, wondering which ones were true and which were fiction, not really knowing if anything in any of the presentations might be useful to us out in the real world. One of your shows, which was based on Linda Godfrey cases, caught our attention, especially the part about Dogman being threatened or challenged by the presence of other upright walking predators. Linda had a theory that the creatures were aware that standing upright draws attention to themselves. Maybe that's why they do it. Maybe they are four-legged animals most of the time, but maybe they stand up on their hind legs to frighten off other bipedal hunters that move onto their turf. All of that made a lot of sense to me and my husband, and suddenly our world seemed a little less crazy. I mean, nothing had changed, and we still had to deal with this creature trying to scare us off our own land. But at least we had a possible explanation for why this was all happening. We still didn't know what to do about any of this, but soon winter hit, and we didn't see the creature anymore. We both joked that he had flown south for the winter, and I felt he was gone. I didn't sense his presence. I didn't notice him, and I didn't hear him anymore for some time. But that creature had not left us at all, and we found this out in a very strange way. One night, my husband accidentally woke me up while getting out of bed to go tinkle. But then when we were both awake, there was a different kind of tinkle coming from downstairs. The tinkle of a small frame of glass being broken. We both knew where it had to have come from. We only had one room that still has the old windows with the smaller frames of glass in them. I told my husband to lock our bedroom door and call the police. But before either of us could do anything, we heard a roar and a scream coming from outside in our backyard. The roar sounded like a monster, but the scream sounded very human, like an adult male human being. Both of us ran to our bedroom window and looked out and down, and both of us saw the same thing play out. There was a figure in a hoodie downstairs, probably a young man because he was thin and fit. I don't know what he was doing in our backyard in the middle of the night, but he had his back toward us and was facing toward a large, muscular, upright canine creature. My husband said it was the same one he saw through his viewfinder scope thing, but all I know is that it was one of them, and it was standing on its hind legs. The Dogman, or whatever it actually is, was blocking the young man from escaping, and I was afraid we were going to watch him turn that young man into chopped hamburger meat. I rattled the window, and the creature looked up at us. In that moment of distraction, the sneaky young man was able to run off into the darkness and get away. The canine creature stood there looking up at me in the second-story window, and I couldn't understand the expression it had on its dog face. I felt kind of afraid that it was going to climb up the wall and come in the window to get me, but instead it just sort of dropped to all fours and trotted away looking for its next adventure. My husband called the police, who found a toolkit outside the window. Apparently we were about to have our house robbed, and maybe other worse things, but the Dogman came back in the middle of the night to protect his turf. And that was when my husband started to leave meat out for this werewolf thing. Now I don't agree with him about this. I think it's going to become used to this meat. What if 1 week we can't leave it anything? Will it come and eat us? I mean, it might, right? We don't really know, do we? We can't expect a wild thing to be moral, at least not in the same way we are. My husband has a different view of it, though. He says if a dog is good, the dog deserves a reward. This dog saved us from a break-in, so my husband feels he deserves a reward. You know, my husband, he's a good man. He gives me his retirement money and I give him an allowance to live on from that, enough to cover his expenses. He buys this meat he throws away to a wild animal out of the money he makes on the weekends working at his cousin's auto garage. That's his own money. I can't exactly tell him how to spend it. But honestly, he buys better meat for that Dogman than he does for either of us. It seems like such a terrible waste of good food on an animal that couldn't possibly tell the difference. My husband says he admires that feral, dangerous thing. He says he's glad it's here, and he wants it to be on our side. Now, I think that's nuts. If we ignored it, and if my husband proved to be the more effective hunter, I think over time the wolfman would have found some other place to hunt. Inviting a monster to stick close to your property because it scared off a burglar one time? That doesn't seem like the wisest choice to me. Can it really tell the difference between a criminal and one of our friends? I doubt it. I know that wild canines are intelligent, but I don't think they're that intelligent. My husband thinks our problem is dealt with, and that we're now safer than ever before. How is having a big predator lurking around our property making us safer? I'm starting to fantasize about us moving to a retirement community, where the only things moving around on 2 legs are other people, and maybe some pigeons and sparrows. I'm curious if anyone watching your channel has an opinion either way. Do more of you side with me or with my husband? And if you side with him, would you really want to live at a central spot already occupied by an upright bipedal carnivore like this one? I don't think I'm being crazy. I wouldn't want my husband trying to tame a bear or a wildcat either. I just don't like large predatory males, I guess. Other than my hubby himself, of course. I've made friends and started to talk to the mother of a young family that I met at the supermarket. I overheard the kids talking about a werewolf, and I got up my nerve to strike up a conversation about this Dogman. Turns out she has the same problem as me, but her husband is overseas, and she can't afford to be throwing good meat away. Still, she told me she started leaving a bowl of dog food at the edge of her property at night. She calls it leaving a bowl for Elijah, and so my husband and I have started to jokingly refer to the Dogman as Elijah the Werewolf. I later found out that Elijah is a religious figure, and so I apologize if anyone finds our joking to be inappropriate. I knew a kid named Elijah in my high school, so I just thought it was an old saying or something like that. Anyway, the important thing about the sightings that family have of the creature are not what they named him or whatever, is that they seem to think that the creature gets around using more than just his hind legs. This family claims that their werewolf sightings are as often as not accompanied by strange lights moving around in the woods. At first I thought they were telling me about some kind of nature lights, like the Brown Mountain lights. But these lights they see can be as small as an insect or as large as a 20-foot glowing disc in the night sky. Sometimes these lights are seen at eye level or below, then other times they can zoom overhead. The family told me they used to think the lights were all alive, living organisms made of light itself, or at least something that glowed brightly. They still think it's possible that some of them are just that. But when they started to see the werewolves, apparently walking into and out of these lights, they realized that the things are also a means of conveyance. They are ships, definitely, since they move the Dogman around. Are they biological themselves, though? Or could they be some kind of AI, only appearing to be biological? For that matter, what if the werewolves are artificial life forms? Or what if they are the same thing as those lights? I mean, what if that family I've befriended weren't seeing Dogman walk onto and off spacecraft? What if they were seeing the light forms give birth to the werewolves? What if they are two aspects of the same phenomenon? I'm not sure if giving birth is the right term, but if you had never seen a bus or train before, you wouldn't know if it was a caterpillar giving birth to hundreds of offspring when those doors opened and the commuters streamed off during rush hour. So this family is in that kind of a situation. They've seen something unlike anything which they ever expected to see. They don't really get what's happening to them, any more than I get what's happening to us. Sometimes in those kinds of scenarios, it gets hard to even describe or explain what's going on to other people. You start to invent your own words and terms when you drift that far out of the mainstream. We don't have friends who are patient with that kind of thing, which is why I love to talk to the mother of that family who is also dealing with these werewolves. The mother told me that she had seen these portals opening up in trees overhead. You can feel in your belly when a portal is beginning to open nearby, she said. And then there's a wiggling sound. I asked her what a wiggling sound is, and she said I would know when I heard one. So apparently on their property, way up in the trees, if you look closely, you can sometimes see reality itself warping in and out. According to this lady and her kids, anyway. It's circular or oval in shape, and it's like reality becomes liquid or something. It usually doesn't end until something has jumped out of the circular or oval area and into our reality. One of her kids told me he saw a circular fire burning in a tree after a werewolf or dogman jumped into our world. He took me to the spot, but I couldn't really see what he was saying. None of the branches looked burned to me, but this event had happened months prior. I have not seen this phenomenon myself, so I don't know what to say about it, other than it makes me nervous. It might cause a forest fire one of these days. I wish these creatures would be more careful. My husband so far has refused to talk to this family. I think he's afraid to hear what they've got to say because he's so comfortable thinking that the Dogman is just a big old pooch and that he can buy the monster's love with some choice cuts of beef and pork. But the thing is, maybe he can. Maybe this other family is seeing a different but similar looking phenomenon. Maybe the other family is just wrong. Maybe my husband is right to not listen to them. All I know for sure is I know nothing. I've seen this thing several times, and yet I still don't really know what it is. But come hell or high water, my husband feeds this werewolf. Even if you searched using the old moon rover, you'd never find a cooler person than Stel Cordova. Please join me in thanking this episode's executive producer, Stel Cordova. Stel is a longtime member of our PayPal subscribers club, which you can join at peterbernard.com. You can also join for the same perks right here on YouTube. Here to explain it all is our international TV spokesmongrel, Henry Lee Dogman. Hank. Thanks, Biggie. And thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button, or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LASCARY. You may need to call back on that one. It cuts off after, I think, 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.